Drop a like and do share. Leave your comments and do not forget to subscribe for more videos.
Hello students, my name is Niyati Seth and thanks for watching Edipedia World videos. My topic for the presentation is the third section of the chapter Photosynthesis. In this, we will discuss about the pigments of photosynthesis. Like how many pigments are involved in photosynthesis, students? Looking at plants, have you ever wondered why and how there are so many shades of green in their leaves, students? Even in the same plant? We can look for an answer to this question by trying to separate the leaf pigments of any green plant through paper chromatography. A chromatographic separation of leaf pigment shows that the color that we see in leaf is not due to the single pigment but due to 4 pigments. And what are those? First is chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B is second, xanthophyll is third, and fourth is carotenoids, students. Okay? So in this lesson, we will explore what a pigment is and the role of chlorophyll in photosynthesis. We will explore how accessory pigments increase a photosynthetic organism's ability to capture sunlight, students. So what are pigments, students? When you hear of the word pigment, you probably think of colors like red flower, green leaves, and blue car. Pigments are not just colors though. They are unique chemical compounds that absorb certain wavelengths of light, okay, and reflect other wavelengths of light, thus appearing that particular color to our eyes, students. So students, when you look at red rose, you are actually seeing red wavelength of light that the pigment in the petals are reflecting, while pigments in the stem absorb red and reflect green wavelength. This process of absorption and reflection is not just important to understanding the way that we see color, though it's how autotrophs, that is organisms that produce their own food, convert light energy to food, students. Okay. Now this is chloroplast, which plants, that is autotrophs, make their own food. Okay, and this is the thylakoid membrane. This is the zoom view of the thylakoid membrane. As we know that cluster of pigment molecules, okay, they are embedded in the thylakoid membrane, students. Okay, where are they present? They are present in the thylakoid membrane. Okay. So this is the zoom view of a thylakoid membrane, and this is the grana, which we call it as a stack of thylakoid, students. Okay, and as we know that pigments, they absorb light energy, okay, from the sun. So you might be wondering, how does a pigment absorb light to fuel photosynthesis? First, we need to talk about light itself. The electromagnetic spectrum is the range of wavelength from radio waves of your car stereo to high energy gamma rays. Okay, chlorophyll and other pigments, they absorb specific visible wavelength and electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, I'll show you how it is, but for the timing, just know that these are the pigment molecules which are embedded in the thylakoid membrane specifically. Okay, so this is your chlorophyll A, okay, and chlorophyll B, okay, which has a magnesium in the center, and this ring is known as porphyrin ring, which is light absorbing head of the molecule. This is the head of the chlorophyll molecule. Okay, and this is the tail, that is hydrocarbon tail of your chlorophyll. Okay. So chlorophyll and other pigments, they are embedded in thylakoid membrane. They are arranged in photosystem, students. Okay, that means this is the cluster of these pigment, and this cluster is known as photosystem. Okay, that helps in the getting or taking light from the sun. Okay, as I told you that this is the spectrum of color. Okay, so this is the spectrum of color. Okay, if you have ever discussed photosynthesis, then you have also talked about chlorophyll, which all autotrophs use to capture light. There are actually many forms of chlorophyll present, such as chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, C1, C2, chlorophyll D. Okay, which all reflect light waves in green spectrum. Okay, in the green spectrum. So this is your spectrum of color: gamma rays, X-rays, UV, infrared, microwaves, radio waves. Okay, and this is the visible light region. This starts from 380 or 400 nanometer to 750 nanometers. Okay, this is the shorter wavelength and higher energy. Okay, and this is violet portion, and this is red. Okay, it has a longer wavelength and it has lower energy. Students, this is red, O, that is orange, yellow, green, blue, I, that is indigo, and V means violet, students. So red color has longer wavelength and lower energy. Okay, unlike violet, which has shorter wavelength and higher energy, students. Wavelength and energy has they are indirectly proportional to each other. Okay, so this is the light absorption spectra. Photosynthesis get energy by absorbing wavelengths of energy. Okay, see, this is the typical diagram that is representing how thylakoids, to be more precise, photosystem which is located in the thylakoid, it absorbs light energy from sun. Okay, so photosynthesis gets energy by absorbing wavelength of light, chlorophyll A. Okay, that absorbs best in your red and blue wavelength and least in the green. Okay, and accessory pigments with different structures, they absorb light of different wavelengths, students. Okay, so this is the wavelength of light which is plotted on the x-axis, and on the y-axis absorption absorbance of light by chloroplast pigment is seen. So this blue one is representing chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B is your this one, green one, yellow one is your carotenoid. Okay, so now here's where it could get a little confusing, because not all chlorophylls are created equal. Okay, all of these various forms of chlorophyll except chlorophyll A are considered accessory pigments, because they, unlike chlorophyll A, can't actually convert photons of light into energy. They assist chlorophyll A in energy absorption process and then pass their absorbed energy onto chlorophyll A for energy production, students. Okay, so this makes chlorophyll A, that is this one, alpha dog in the process of photosynthesis, because without chlorophyll A, plant could not actually access the light energy they absorb. Okay, so chlorophyll B, carotenoid and xanthophyll are your accessory pigments with different structures, and they absorb light of different wavelengths, students. Okay, and chlorophyll A is your major pigment. Okay, now what are photosystems, student? What is photosystem? Photosystem, you can define it the process that converts light energy into chemical energy that takes place in a multi-protein complex, which we call it as photosystem, students. And they are of two types, photosystem 2 and photosystem 1. And these two type of photosystem, they are embedded in the thylakoid membrane. I have just shown you. Okay. So each photosystem, they play a key role in capturing energy from sunlight by exciting electrons, and these energized electrons are transported by energy carrier molecules which power the light independent reaction. I have already taught you the two phases of photosynthesis, that is light dependent and light independent. So for better understanding of this chapter, please refer to that presentation. Okay. Now come to the photosystem. As I told you that photosystem is consist of light harvesting complex and reaction center. Okay. Pigment in light harvesting complex pass light energy to two special chlorophyll A molecules in the reaction center. Let's see how it is. So the light excites an electron from chlorophyll A pair, which passes to the primary electron acceptor. Okay, I'll show you in diagram how it is, then it will be clear to you very well. So the excited electron must then be replaced, and photosystem 2, electron comes from a splitting of water. Please note this. Okay, which release oxygen as a waste product. So electron, it comes from a splitting of water in case of photosystem 2. And in photosystem 1, electron comes from chloroplast electron transport chain, that is your ETC. So in photosystem 1, electron comes from chloroplast electron transport chain, students. So this is your photosystem 2, that is P680, and photosystem 1 is your P700, students. Okay, so this is your typical representation of a thylakoid. This is the thylakoid membrane. These are the pigment molecules. This is the reaction center. This is the primary electron acceptor. Here this is also a pigment molecules which are embedded. Okay. So when light is absorbed by the pigment molecules, it goes from here to here, and as I told you that in PS2, from electron is released from the splitting of water. So water is splitted here into half O2 plus 2H plus. An electron is released, so this electron goes to here. Okay, that is your primary acceptor. And this entire portion is known as light harvesting complex, student, where pigment molecules are embedded in the thylakoid membrane. Okay, and this is your PS1, that we call it as P700, students. Here these are the pigment molecule which are embedded in the thylakoid membrane. Okay, and this is chlorophyll second A pair. Okay, this is the second A pair. I'll explain you in detail what it is and how it works. Okay, but for the timing, just know that the brief. Okay, so this is the two photosystem present in the thylakoid membrane, students. So photon, that means it comes from the sun. It strikes the photosystem or the pigments which are embedded in the thylakoid membrane. From here it goes to here. Transfer of energy takes place. This black arrows are representing the transfer of energy from one pigment cell to another to like it forms a cascade like. Okay, and then electron, when it strikes here, electron transfers takes place from to the primary electron acceptor. Okay, and these are the antennae pigment molecules, students. So two photosystems are present in thylakoid membrane. Photosystem is nothing, it is just a collection of chlorophyll molecules which are also known as antennae pigment molecules, students. It acts as light gathering molecules, that means it attracts the photon which is coming from the sun. Okay, this is as I told you that there are two types of photosystem present. So first is your photosystem 2, okay, which is your P680, and chlorophyll A is the major pigment of it, and it absorbs 680 nanometer. That's why photosystem 2 is also known as P680, because it absorbs 680 nanometer wavelength red light, okay. And photosystem 1 is chlorophyll B is the major pigment of photosystem 1, and P700 means it absorbs 700 nanometer wavelength red light. So both PS, that is photosystem, it absorbs red light, okay, it absorbs wavelength of red light, students. And these are the antennae pigments, and this is the reaction center, as I told you. Now, as I told you that in PS1, it takes electron from the electron transport chain of photosynthesis, okay. So this is the electron transport chain of photosynthesis, okay. See, this is your C4 light dependent reaction it is, because it requires light, okay. And water is needed for the release of the oxygen. You can see it produces light dependent reaction, produces ATP and NADPH, which acts as a reactant for the Calvin cycle, that is your dark cycle, okay. And it produces ADP and NADPH, which goes into the light dependent reaction to get converted into ATP and NADPH. This process goes on and on to produce sugar molecule, that is your hexose, that is C6H12O6, whose basic formula is CH2O, which is a sugar, okay. So this goes into here. This is the thylakoid zoom view. This is the thylakoid membrane where the light pigments are embedded. This is PS2, okay. So light is absorbed in the pigment center, then it goes to the, this is the first step, that water is splitting, it releases O2. This is the first step, students. Then the second step is that it electron gets transferred into to a primary acceptor, which is PQ, that is plastoquinone, and hydrogen is transported simultaneously into inside of this, and then it gets transferred into cytochrome complex, then to the plastocyanin, that is PC, and then to the PS1, where it gets converted into ferrodoxin, that is FD, and then to the NADPH and to the Calvin cycle, okay. And from here ATP synthase, it allows hydrogen ion to get transported out, and ADP along with the inorganic phosphate gets converted into ATP, and this ATP goes to the Calvin cycle, and it acts as a your reactant for the Calvin cycle, that is your dark phase of photosynthesis, that is light independent. That means it doesn't require light to carry out the process, okay. So this is how it is. This is the photosystem 2, where chlorophyll A is the major pigment. This is photosystem 1, where chlorophyll B is the major component, okay. Now this is your photosystem 2. Light hits the antennae molecule, these green ones are your antennae molecule, and it goes to the P680. That means it absorbs red light, red wavelength of 680 nanometer, and it expels 2 electron, which goes to the primary acceptor, okay. So this is the energy of electron which is representing. So this is your photosystem 2, which has P680, and where chlorophyll A are the major pigment that absorbs light, okay. So this is the first step. 2 electrons are generated, which goes to the primary acceptor, okay. two electrons are generated, which goes to the primary acceptor students. Okay, and then a splitting of water takes place that releases oxygen. Okay, how it is, this is H2O, that is water. It gets split and produces oxygen and 2 hydrogen. Okay, see, hydrogen molecule is released, and it releases 2 electrons, and these 2 electrons are these 2 electrons. Okay, and these 2 electron goes here to the primary accepted students. Now what about these H plus ions? It goes here in the chloroplast thylakoid. Okay, and ATP synthase is this one, that transport, and it produces ATP. Okay, now this is the, from the primary acceptor it goes to the plastoquinone. Okay, this is plastoquinone, and to the electron transport chain students. Okay, so this is the electron transport chain of photosynthesis, where first I told you that electron, it gets generated and it goes to the primary acceptor. Then second step is splitting of water that releases oxygen. Okay, which I just showed you. Now 2 electrons are generated and it goes to the primary acceptor, and from primary acceptor it goes to the plastoquinone. Okay, and third to the electron transport chain students. Okay, from electron transport chain H plus ion or H plus gradient takes place, and then this is the from plastoquinone to plastocyanin. Between is the cytochrome complex, which is present in the mitochondria students. So third step, it takes place in mitochondria, that is electron transport chain students. And fourth, that it electrons flow provides energy for chemiosmotic synthesis of your ATP. Okay, I'll explain you what chemiosmotic hypothesis. It was put forward to explain the mechanism, how ATP is synthesized. Like in respiration and photosynthesis too, ATP synthesis is linked to development of proton gradient across the membrane, and this time these are the membranes of thylakoid. There is one difference though. Here proton accumulation is towards the inside of the membrane, that is in the lumen. In respiration, protons accumulate in the intermembrane space of mitochondria when electron moves through the ETS. Okay, I will explain you in detail what is chemiosmotic hypothesis, which was put forward to explain the synthesis of ATP. Okay, so this is how it is, that these are the H plus ion which goes into the ATP synthase to produce ATP. Okay, so this is the chloroplast and this is the thylakoid, where the proton accumulation is there. Okay, which has ATP synthase, and thus it produces ATP. This ATP goes to the Calvin cycle to build carbohydrate students. So now I hope it is clear to you that how ATP is linked to the Calvin cycle, because it has to build carbohydrates. Okay, now let's see how it is. First is that P680 and this is P700 students. This is PS2 and this is PS1, whose major component is chlorophyll B, and this is P700, and this in P680 chlorophyll A is the major pigment. It releases electrons, 2 electrons to the primary acceptor, and then these 2 electron goes to the plastoquinone and then to the cytochrome complex, to plastocyanin, and then to the PS700, and from PS700 it also releases 2 electron which goes to the primary acceptor. Okay, this happens when photon strikes the antennae molecule present in the P700. Okay, so this is your fifth step. that takes place, that 2 electrons are also released from the P700. It goes to the primary acceptor. Okay, students? See, two electrons are getting transferred. These 2 electron from the plastocyanin, that is PS, it goes into the PS700 to fill the electron vacancy, students. Okay. Now this is your Z scheme. This is Z scheme, it is called as. Can you see the Z formed? Yeah. So this is how it is, that it forms a Z scheme. This whole scheme of transfer of electron right from the PS2, that is your P680, uphill to the acceptor, down the electron transport chain. This is electron transport chain to P700, that is PS1, excitation of electron transfer of another acceptor, and finally downhill to NADP plus, causing it to be reduced to NADPH plus H plus, is called as Z scheme due to its characteristic shape. As you can see, this forms a Z shape. Okay, this shape is formed when all carriers are placed in a sequence on redox potential scale, students. Okay, so this is how it is, because as you can see that this primary acceptor from the PS1, that is P700, it goes to the electron transport chain and to the NADP plus reductase, which produces NADPH plus proton. Okay, so it forms a Z scheme. See, this is 2 electron which is generated. It goes to the ferredoxin, and this is the 6th step, which is your electron transport chain, and thus NADPH is formed. Okay, and this NADPH goes to the Calvin cycle, that is this. Okay, so this is again the same how it is, that sun, it is energy, it strikes the photosystem II, then it goes to the plastoquinone, then a splitting of water takes place that releases oxygen outside. Okay, for animals to inhale it, and then hydrogen, because water is broken down, then oxygen is released and accumulation of proton ion is taken place because of the splitting of the water. Okay, and thus ATP is released, you can see, and it goes to the Calvin cycle for the process or the formation of carbohydrate. Then sun energy, it strikes photosystem I. It also releases 2 electron which goes to the ferredoxin, and then NADPH is produced which goes to the Calvin cycle. Okay, this is the Calvin cycle, that is your dark phase. It is a phase of photosynthesis that doesn't require light. For the NADPH is released to the Calvin cycle. Okay, so this is the ETS that uses light energy to produce ATP and NADPH that goes to the Calvin cycle. ATP is produced by PS2 and NADPH is produced by PS1 that goes to the Calvin cycle. PS2 absorbs light. Excited electron passes from chlorophyll to primary electron acceptor, and it need to replace electron in chlorophyll. Enzyme, it extracts electron from water and it supplies them to chlorophyll. It splits H2O and it releases oxygen. O combines with another O to form oxygen, and O2 is released to the atmosphere and we breathe easier. Okay, so this is the experimental evidence. Where did O2 come from? So radioactive tracer was used, that was O18. Okay, this is your experiment 1, in which 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of H2O. This H2O was traced to see here the product that this O2 comes from this splitting of H2O, okay, and thus glucose is also formed along with the releasal of the oxygen, okay. Now the experiment 2, this shows that oxygen present in the glucose, this is glucose, okay, so the oxygen present in the glucose comes from the carbon dioxide, okay. This oxygen was traced by O8, okay. So oxygen that we respire comes from the splitting of the water which takes place in the thylakoid of chloroplast, and this glucose is made up from the carbon dioxide in the plants, okay. So it proved that oxygen came from H2O and not CO2 because plant split H2O. So this was all about it. Now in my next section of the presentation I'll explain you what is chemiosmotic hypothesis, like how ATP is synthesized in the chloroplast, and then we will proceed towards the phosphorylation, that is cyclic and non-cyclic phosphorylation. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching ATPedia word videos. Thank you.